Hi, I'm Ian Sefferman from Mobile Dev HQ. We're here with the App Developer Conversations, and this is our second week here with Roby Ganguly from Attentive and Ryan Morrell from PlacePlay. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
In this conversation, we're going to talk a little bit about mobile to offline, so businesses that are built on mobile but have their business model around offline, some sort of integration between the two.
Okay.
I think let's start out with an example. I think that the biggest and best example right now is probably Uber, where they are a sole mobile play, but everything that they do is based in the offline world, based in getting around, going places with a driver. Talk a little bit about sort of how do you think that this market can play out? Is there a lot of room for others to do these mobile to offline plays? Is the market even big enough to support this?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting and a little bit reminiscent of like the late 90s, right? When there was a ton of web to offline businesses, pets.com, and we can go through a huge list. Cosmo, right? And in retrospect, the reason, well, there's lots of reasons why those companies failed, but the biggest reason was that the proliferation of high-speed internet and the number of people online just wasn't there, right? So now you hear VCs and other kind of longer time players saying, we're just going to recycle through all these ideas that we had from the 90s because now the internet is there. So I wonder if we're not going down a little bit of the same path with these mobile to offline businesses where the market just might not be there. Uber is, I think, a really interesting example of this specifically because it appeals to a subset of the population that is highly likely to have a smartphone, right? So although smartphone penetration is going up, it certainly doesn't apply across, up and down the economic ladder, but it does at the top or the mid to above, and that's Uber's target customer, right? So I think they're a really interesting example. I don't know that the market's big enough to support a ton of them.
I think that one of the things that's really exciting about it is realizing, so VCs are talking about this move to hundreds of millions of people being online, having high-speed access, like you said. But the move to mobile is going to lead to, in the next 5 years, 3 billion plus people who have access to the internet. And that combined with the really personal experience leads me to believe that there's a lot of offline opportunities that can be disrupted, because I think so many places in our lives we can look around and we can say, this is kind of inefficient, and if I had something that was intelligent enough about me and what I do and my preferences, it could be faster. So for example, checking out at the grocery store, they have these automated checkout things. They still stink, right? Yeah. They're really bad. I could see that being disrupted. That seems like a really big opportunity. And I see lots of opportunities for experiences to get much better with these personal devices.
Yeah, I mean, just looking out this window right now, I can think of at least one off the top of my head, paying parking, right?
Yeah.
Paying parking is an awful, awful experience. But I think that could be made a lot easier. I am skeptical that the government actually wants me to be to be able to pay my parking quickly, or also to know if my parking is about to expire and refill quickly. But the opportunity is certainly there. How do you guys think about sort of how the market fragmentation between platforms, so iOS or Android or things like that, how do you think that affects these mobile to offline businesses having to build so much more software to support it?
I think it introduces, for a lot of these opportunities, more of a cost. So in many businesses, I think, that are just pure mobile app plays where maybe it's a game or it's utility, you could start out on one platform, prove it out, and go. But if you're looking to really improve people's lives in the offline world, you have to have enough coverage for it to matter. It seems like to me that at a minimum you need to be investing in iOS and Android, and you have to make sure that your experience is consistent enough across both that people, when they talk about it to each other, because it's an offline experience and word of mouth is important, they can say, check it out, look how awesome this is, and if your friend has a different type of device than you, a different OS, that you can still have that same experience.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and what we've seen, or at least what I've seen, is that the companies that are doing this really well have been really well capitalized from the start. Uber certainly did not start out with a couple guys in the garage, right? Or they came along at kind of right place, right time. So Foursquare is an example of being at South by Southwest and everyone going crazy about it, and they were able to build that momentum really quickly without a lot of money. But there's not a lot of companies building these kind of rich mobile to offline experiences that aren't either well capitalized or kind of got really lucky to some extent. And I think there's some good examples today with companies that are trying to either kill Craigslist or kind of become these ambient awareness apps, like Highlighter and a couple of the other ones that have gotten a lot of press, that despite having a lot of money and a lot of press, don't seem to be making meaningful headway in the consumer market. And I actually think the Craigslist conversation is a potentially interesting one.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Great. Well, I think that's great. Thank you so much for joining, and look forward to talking again next week. The timing of raising matters, and you can either sell a dream or you can sell a product and revenue, right? To investors. And so, if you, for whatever reason, so Uber is a good example.